Today, once again, we have the Vice President of the CPCA, Greg Buchanan, here today to talk to us about the races that took place this past weekend at North Battleford, as well as the upcoming races that will be in Wainwright. And so thank you once again for being with us, Greg.
Thanks for having me there, Thomas.
All right, Greg, so one thing that anybody who's looked at the results or watched the races down in North Battleford can agree upon, there's one name that comes to mind, and that's Chris Flanagan. He swept the table, winning for the Dash for Cash, as well as all of the other big awards, and now leads the CPCA standings. So, Greg, tell me a little bit about how impressive of a run Chris Flanagan had at North Battleford this past weekend.
Yeah, swept the table, and this was building too. Like this is a driver that's kind of building on his barn last number of years, and then even building in his barn in the opening weekend in Meadow Lake. You saw flashes of it in Meadow Lake over that 3-day show, and then in North Battleford, a chilly night on Thursday, warmed up on Friday, and Chris really seemed to warm up with the weather too. His outfit was popping, as they say, coming out of the barrels, and wins the aggregate show title after 3 days of racing, and then gets to the Dash for Cash and grabs that number one barrel and gets on that rail and does not look back. But Preston Faithful just finished in second in that dash, 0.02 of a second back of him. So it was a very impressive Dash for Cash and a great way to leave North Battleford after not racing there for the last number of years. Fans wanting more now, so that's great to see.
And so with Chris Flanagan now rising up to that first spot, Devin Mitzwing then fell to second spot in the driver's standings. We also see Logan Gorst now rising up the standings, as well as Ryan Baptiste and Todd Baptiste are also rising up. And then Preston Faithful is rising up the standings after good races at North Battleford. Greg, tell me about those drivers and how good they looked at North Battleford and then going into Wainwright this weekend.
Yeah, I think Preston Faithful has always been kind of knocking on the door. You look at what he did last year, and then, outside of the CPCA, he went to a WPCA show with the Grand Prairie Stampede. It didn't go his way there. I lacked a little confidence after that week, and you kind of almost doubt yourself. But he had a strong Meadow Lake show and really came out hard in North Battleford. Almost won a day money a couple of times. So Preston Faithful bounced back. You look at, even a Danny Ringette had a solid show in North Battleford. And Ryan Baptiste brothers again knocking on the door, and Ryan Baptiste qualifying for a Dash for Cash, draws a number 3 barrel. And on a short track like that, if you're coming off barrel number 3, it doesn't look good for you if you're trying to get to that rail and trying to get around that track quick.
And so, Greg, tell me a little bit about the Wainwright races and kind of the conditions that we'll be seeing, as well as some of the other events that will be happening at Wainwright this weekend.
I think more than anything, it's all about the track in Wainwright. It's the smallest track in the sport of chuck wagon racing. So it is, you come out of the infield, you get around the first corner, second corner, and all of a sudden there's not much of a third corner, not much of a fourth corner, because all of a sudden you're home. So it's turn to the left and keep on going. They call it a bull ring. So it's a short, unforgiving track to outriders. And I say that because if you're behind the 8 ball coming out of the infield as an outrider, you have to catch up to that driver that you're outriding for. If you don't, you're going to cost him a penalty. So it's challenging for outriders, challenging for drivers, and it's going to be a very quick track. Just excited to go back to Wainwright, 70th annual Wainwright Stampede, and not just us, the Canadian Pro Rodeo Association's there, and it's always fun in Wainwright for Stampede Week.
Thank you so much for all the information, Greg, and we will definitely talk to you about more CPCA action.